Welcome to the Concert Queen Connect. I am joined with the man, the myth, the legend, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, Mobley. Say hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was telling him it's like meeting the wizard, I feel like, because you're a man of many talents, all the different things between producing your own music and playing and directing, and you're a coder, and you have all these different skills that I feel like you've really put together in this culmination of what you're doing now. So can you kind of speak to and worldly influences as well? I know you've traveled and done all these kinds of things. So can you just talk about how you got your start in music?
I kind of stumbled into music. I started playing violin when I was very young, like 4 or 5, and then I picked up trumpet in middle school, and then when I was a teenager, I picked up the guitar and started writing songs. And after I started writing songs, I realized that I was really obsessed with music, and that I needed to either find a way to make a living at something that would allow me the time to do music, or find a way to make a living making music. And so I started a band, had a band for a while, through kind of a freak accident. My band was a duo, excuse me. There were 2 of us. We were a duo at the time, and my drummer got hurt right before we had a tour, and so I had to come up with some kind of show that I could do by myself, and I came up with the kind of one-man thing I'm doing now. I'd already been making the records pretty much by myself, so it wasn't too big a stretch, but I did that, and people really reacted strongly to it, and it kind of enabled me to become a full-time musician. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years about.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I didn't even know you played violin. So how did were just like, you're picking up one instrument, you're like, okay, next, another instrument next, or was that something that just the curiosity of music, like you said, with all the different elements to it? I mean, each of those are very different, to go from strings to horns to percussion. Like, that's a lot. So how did you make those shifts into the different instruments like that?
When I was a kid, it was just kind of, I don't know, I just picked it up. I didn't really think too much about it. And then everything I've learned since then, like learning drums, learning piano, learning other instruments, has been kind of to facilitate my songwriting. When I first started writing songs, I could only really write songs on guitar, and I found that to be pretty limiting because I had all these sounds in my head that I wanted to be able to get out. So learning to play other instruments, learning to produce, all that stuff was just in service of trying to get control over my artistic expression. I found that depending on producers, depending on too many other outside musicians, just kind of left me at the mercy of other people when I wanted to be able to I have an idea, I want to do it now. And so yeah, I think probably my number one skill is I'm a pretty good self-teacher. And so that's kind of how I've picked up everything.
And like you said, self-teacher to the extreme, I feel like, because you not only are you playing all the instruments now, but you're directing your own music videos as well. So yeah. How did that how does that process? I'm trying to think of conceptually, like you said, we're in the audience and we see you, we're like, oh, you're the performer, like there's all these other people in the background, but you're doing everything. Like, you're curating it, you have this vision, and it's really cool just to see that come to life. So how is that kind of, does it take longer for you, or do you think it's a faster process because you already know what you want? But
yeah, for me, it's definitely easier and faster. I think it's really cool and beautiful when people have like these collaborative relationships where they just can basically finish each other's sentences, and like that's what a great band is like. But I also think those are really kind of hard to come by and rare, and I haven't exactly found the kind of creative relationships with people where I can just completely take my hands off of it and trust that we're just on the same page. Um, but the collaborators that I do have that I work really well with, particularly on video stuff, I work a lot with Jacob Weber and Ari Morales, and the thing that they have that makes them really fun for me to collaborate with is they're very good at what they do, great professionals, and there's never any ego when the three of us are working together. It's just like what is the idea? How do we get to the best version of the idea? And they're really cool with letting me kind of steer the ship. Um, the whole reason that I got into producing in the first place was I had these ideas for songs, and I would go try to work with producers, and I could never get to the thing that I had in my head. It was
Wow.
always I would finish a record and it would be like, oh, I just spent all this money and I don't even like this
Oh,
recording.
wow.
Um, so that kind of drove me to learn to produce myself, which has been so much more gratifying. Uh, I think I think an aspect of of all of this that is kind of maybe harder to see from the outside is that there are just so, especially as a musician in the current day, you're expected to write songs, you're expected to record songs, you're expected to perform songs, you're expected to have great videos, you're expected to handle your social media, and all that's supposed to be great. You're supposed to
Hmm.
do all these different jobs when the fact is, like, some people are just only really passionate about one of those things. Um, and I just happen to be fortunate enough that I'm really a very detail oriented person, and I like knowing how things work. And so that that pairs well with the fact that I'm super opinionated about everything I work on.
So, which of those things would you say you're most passionate about? Like you said, you are as an artist. We had Jonathan Terrell here, who was his own PR firm. Like when he released an album, and he's there
Yeah.
talking to different PR firms. But which part, like you said, is something that, because at the end of the day, you're creative as well, and you want to focus on the creative. And I totally
Yeah.
hear you. I think that's hard. It's hard watching it too, as the person who wants to just hear your music, but you do know that there's all these layers to it, and the way that it's changed just from, like you said, you just want to make music and do these different elements, but now you're doing your videos. Which of those parts would you say that you just absolutely love them? Like if they're like, Mobley, you can only do this thing and this one thing only, which would you pick
Yeah.
out of all those things?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question about the question. Are
Okay.
we separating writing songs from recording songs?
Ooh, well, I guess those are all part of the whole process. So yeah, I guess which one would you say is something that you're just the most passionate about? Because that's another thing too. And I don't know, for people that are not familiar with Mobley, there's so many different layers to his music, and there's so many different layers to you. And there's lots of, I had a lot of aha moments, and I was like, oh, sneaky Mobley, when I was listening about like James Crow and all these hidden kind of meanings and kinds of things that you're creating during your songwriting process. So I feel like that is something, I guess that is kind of hard to ask you like what your favorite thing is, because they're all very, very different, and they all play very different roles and all those things.
I think so. They're really intertwined for me. Like when I'm writing, I don't really make demos anymore. When I'm writing a song, I'm also recording the song. I'm also producing it. I'm also thinking about what the video is going to be like, what I'm going to do in the live show. Like I'm thinking about all those things at once. But if I had to pick, I would I would write and record music. And like if I could just make a living doing that, I wouldn't even necessarily need anybody to hear them, honestly. Like I just really, really
Wow.
love making records. Um, it's great when people hear them. It's great playing shows. That's fun and all that. But like the feeling of sitting down in a room. I'm sitting right now in my living room, which is my studio. This is where I make my records. The feeling of coming into this room and there being a thing that doesn't exist in the world at all, and then I sit down and a couple hours later there's a recording, a song. Especially because my two of my favorite art forms are music and animation, like film animation. And the thing I love about both of those is when you make a film, sure, you're imagining all these worlds, but like in the movie, like there's a cowboy riding through the desert, let's say, but that also is a picture of a real thing that happened. Like there really was a person on a horse riding through the desert. With animation and with music, there's no the way they refer to it in the field is there's no prior event necessarily. Like when you're seeing animation, you're not seeing something that actually happened. You're tapping directly into somebody's mind, more or less. And that's the way I feel about music as well, especially with a lot of modern production tools um, where maybe the thing doesn't exist outside of a computer. I really like the thing I really like about music and animation is that you can really if you have enough skill with it, you can really take someone else and like bring them inside your own mind. And I think that's just really a really satisfying artistic endeavor.
That's awesome. And it truly is a complete sensory experience because like you said, you're obviously capturing them, but just beyond the senses, but in their mind, and you're making them think
Yeah.
beyond just hearing and watching and those different, I mean, that's why I love music. That's why I love concerts. And, you know, going to Mobley's show, it is a total, like I didn't know I'd seen your music, I'd listened to it, but I had actually seen the whole experience of you, the lights that he's curating, him on the drums and the guitar and all those different things. And you're just like, wow, that is a show. And it's not just, like you said, someone that's just writing a song and sitting there on a guitar. It's like you're taking it to that next level. And I'd love to talk about this new album that you have that is coming out and all the different elements that you have associated with that as well, talking about the animations and the visuals. But can you tell people about your new album that's dropping here?
Yeah, the record is called Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme. And we also made a film that accompanies it. It's a 4-part short film um, that kind of tells a surrealist version of uh, the themes that I'm trying to explore in the record. Um, and then actually on the day that the record came out, I don't know where I am in time right now.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
but
We're after it drops. So,
okay, so there's also a new video out for one of the songs that is a standalone video separate from the film for the song Mate. Um, and I wrote the record when I wrote the record I was in Thailand. I had been touring in Australia and I decided to take some time off because I hadn't had any time off in a while, and went over to Thailand. And the plan was to not really work on anything, but I ended up seeing this guitar in a music shop in Bangkok and couldn't resist, and so I grabbed it, and then we went down and hung out uh, on this island in the south. And before I knew it, I had basically written the whole record and recorded all of the guitar for it on this like knockoff Telecaster that I bought in a
wow, it's supposed to be vacation.
vacation.
It turned into your album.
Yeah,
No big deal.
yeah.
Well, the album itself, I listened to it and I wanted to, and I'm curious to see what your process is or how you would like people. Well, you already know how people are going to experience it, but I listened to it first because I wanted to hear it and just kind of have my own imagery in my head before I watched the movie. And watching the movie was just so, it was this whole the union of seeing like, wow, okay, this is how that goes with this. And it was beautiful. So I
Thank
commend
you.
you on something like that, because I know that's obviously not easy to do, to have something like go to that length, and seeing even the songs, and y'all will see how these songs all come together. It's really, really cool. And it's like you're almost dangling a carrot in front of people when you're dropping what you see. You're like, with the one video, and then I saw, when I saw it all put together, it was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. Now I see how this all plays together, and it
Yeah.
blew my mind. Just
Thank you.
congratulations on that. I really was. I watched it twice because I was so taken. So there's that kind of kung fu aspect to it. Almost like you said, you have you're encompassing all these things that we're talking about, the animation, all these loves of animation, of cinematography, of music, and you're acting in it too. And so can you tell people kind of, you have these different chapters, and what are these themes, these thematic themes that you're putting into this video?
So the title of the record, "Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme," comes from a poem that I wrote, and a friend of mine, who's a Mexican immigrant, reads the poem at the beginning of the record. Um,
Oh.
and the I wrote the poem in response to the family separations that were happening at the southern border, and the the line the line in the poem is, how good it is to be young and dying in the Occident Supreme. And um, Occident just means West. And the point of the poem, and a lot of the point of the record, is to kind of challenge the what I think is a pretty dominant narrative, at least in our part of the world, that the West, which usually means like Western Europe, where we think of white people as coming from, and then the countries that they colonized. So the United States, Canada, Australia, New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand, countries like that. Um, there's this idea that they dominate um, global politics, global economics, because of some sort of intrinsic like cultural superiority that white people have. And obviously, I don't believe that, but I don't think it can be overstated how much you are fed that message in the way that we teach history, and in the way that we allocate our resources, and the things that you see represented in media. And so getting a chance to kind of step outside of that, and just look back at some of the ugliness of what was going on here, what is going on here, in particular with Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme. That particular line, I was thinking about the fact that we live in the richest country in the history of humanity, and people don't have health care, and people don't have the basic needs, the basic things that they need to survive, in spite of the fact that we just have so much that everybody could be sharing. Um, so the record is about challenging excuse me, challenging those ideas and the systems that they underlie. And so in the film, the three villains are kind of the stand-in for all those bad ideas, and
Wow.
the power that they have. And in the film, my character and the woman who's kind of the hero of the
The
whole thing,
heroiness. I don't know what you
um,
call those. The heroiness, or I'm trying to think of what the heroine is
yeah,
called. I don't know.
um, they and like this very intentionally multicultural group of people kind of take down the villains, and yeah, so it's meant to be, the film is meant to be kind of a like I said, a kind of somewhat surreal take on that idea of challenging these racist, classist, Eurocentric ideas, and putting forward newer, better ideas that hopefully will lead to more fair and peaceful world.
So is that what essentially, and y'all will see this, and you'll know what I'm talking about, but you have this silver case that they're guarding with their lives and moving throughout the different scenes with it. Is that representative of all, like you said, that power of taking that back? And then they're,
Yeah, yeah. I chose a phone as a symbol, um, because I think the power to, if whoever can control what people think, um, really can control everything else. And um, you know, mass communication is the biggest tool for doing that. And so I wanted to have a tool of communication be a symbol for that. But yeah, ultimately it's about taking control of the ability to shape the way that people think, to shape the way that you think. Um, the first line of the song James Crow is, "I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes," and that is about these bad ideas that you inherit, these ways of seeing the world, these histories that you get taught, that at the end of the day are just an idea that somebody who's dead made up in order to get more power, get more money, whatever. And then as you get older, as you learn more about the world, you realize that all of these ways that you have of interacting with the world, of thinking, of valuing other people, valuing yourself, were just made up by somebody who some greedy, selfish person, um, who didn't care about people like you at all. So yeah, that's the main theme of the record is about um, kind of taking back control of your mind, and and our kind of collective consciousness, um, and doing something good with it.
wow. So you're taking all of this information and you're wanting people to essentially think past what they've been taught, what they know. How would you, like, in a perfect world, and like you said, these kids and what they're reading and what they're learning, it's like, it's like, how does that change? And I know you're such an instrument for change in the Austin community, and I definitely see you, and I'm sure everybody else does, as, you know, a figurehead with all these different elements of change that need to happen when it comes to, you know, civil rights and, you know, the BLM movement, everything. So what is your best way, in addition to music? Like, how could you tell people to kind of think outside the box, or what do you think is the best for that?
I think that the one thing that recurs, anytime that you really engage with any sort of critical um, any sort of critical history or critical assessment of the way that things are, the thing that recurs is, if an idea is making you comfortable, if an idea makes you comfortable where you are, then you should probably question that idea. The reality is, like, if there's something that through your whole life it's been like, well, um, people like me just do well, people like me just succeed, people like me are smart, people like me are pretty, people like me are on and on and on and on. The fact is that that's just a completely constructed way of thinking that sure might be benefiting you, but is absolutely costing other people something. And um, so for me, like the most central fundamental aspect of any sort of introspection and then extrinsic to that change has to be like really interrogating um, the histories, the behaviors, the ways of being, whether it's religion, whether it's, an economic system, whatever it is. If you feel like you're doing well in that system, then you should take a look at who isn't doing well and ask yourself in a really serious and critical way, are they not doing well because something's wrong with them, or are they not doing well because the system is set up for me to succeed and for them to fail?
Wow. So is that something, I mean, where does that come from in you? Like, is that something that as a child you saw these types of injustices, or like that is just, it's such a profound thing that a lot of people don't think about. They don't think about, um, like you said, if they're singing along to, Nobody's Favorite or James Crow, and they're just, oh, this is a catchy song and I'm singing to this, but little do they know that there's all this background to it and all of this intrinsic meaning to it. But like for you, where did that, I'm just so curious, I'm fascinated by it. Like, where does that come from in you? And was that something like, was that through your childhood? Did something kind of spearhead off to make you question everything?
Um, I it's I think it's difficult for people who don't know me outside of my professional life to believe, but I'm a very shy person. I was a very shy child, very quiet, and kind of kept to myself. And as a result, I watched a lot. I paid attention to what was going on around me, I think, and I just spent a lot of time alone thinking. And I think as a result, and I'm not holding this up as like I'm such a great person. It's just like this is just who I happen to be. Um, I I I I do what I think people refer to as overthinking. I don't think it's overthinking. I think it's actually good to think that much.
Yeah.
But but uh but that's just something that I've always done. And you know, especially when you are a part of some marginalized group in this country, and so obviously for me as a black person, you know, there is this tension that you always feel and can never quite understand, where it's like, okay, all the things that they're saying, if I squint hard enough, I can make them make sense. But as soon as I open my eyes a little bit, I can tell something isn't right. I can just tell something isn't right. Like, you're telling me that the reason why X and Y is this one thing, but that doesn't hold up, and it makes a lot more sense if it's this way. And you know, throughout my childhood, I think I did a lot of squinting because um, that's kind of something that you have to do to survive. But as an adult, I think it became harder and harder to keep squinting, and and so honestly, I think I question this stuff as much for my own sanity as anything else.
Yeah. Well, it's a great place to do it, especially to have this artistic expression, because you're not having to necessarily come out so explicitly, but you're able to do it in your own way where you're creatively expressing it as
Yeah,
well, which is pretty cool. Well, let's shift gears a little bit
sure.
to your tour, your virtual tour. So before that, and I wish I could have seen it, the drive-by tour that you were doing. So you were
Yeah.
really kind of the first person that spearheaded doing something different and trying something different. And now, so y'all, he was like, I guess tell them what you were doing, like, right. Cause that was in around May or June, would you
Yeah,
say?
it was this
This
summer, yeah.
summer?
We called them curbside
Curbside
concerts, where
concerts.
I ran some contests where people who listen to my music were able to enter, and I drew names in the Austin area, and then drove around and gave these little short concerts from the curbs out in front of people's houses. Um, the idea was, for me, live streams really aren't a replacement for in-person concerts. They're a different thing. They're nice and all that,
Hmm.
but it's just not the same thing. And so I wanted to find a way to safely, without exposing anybody to any unnecessary risk, to actually physically perform for people. So I drove to probably, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 houses around the Austin area,
Wow.
and played these short concerts like 20 or 30 feet away from people. And it really seemed to mean a lot to people to be able to make that connection in person, you know?
Yeah. Well, especially as someone who personally loves concerts, I was bummed to miss that, but I can't even imagine. I saw the response just that you were getting just on social media with people that were just jazzed about it. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
that was a gift, that you're both getting something out of it. They're
Yeah.
getting the gift of seeing a concert, seeing a show by someone as talented as you, and you're being able to perform to people actually in public. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. And so then
Yeah.
with the live streams, like you're saying, I know that's been a challenge. Some of the different artists that I've talked to, you know, Maylot was here and she did her ACL. I know you as well, like doing these ACL performances, but to, like you said, not the ACL typical festival audience.
Yeah.
So we got to get you back there. I definitely want to see you up on that big stage when festivals and things like that do come back. But so how has that transitioned from, like you said, the live stream, something like that, to now you're doing a tour from it?
Yeah. So my idea for that was, you know, given my background in film and given that I have kind of a cinematic vision for what my show can look like, what we decided to do was to basically call up a bunch of the venues that we would have been playing under normal circumstances and see if they'd be interested in partnering with us on a series of ticketed live stream shows. Uh, and for the actual shows themselves, what we are doing is going around all around the Austin area. So we shot one at the new Austin FC stadium. We shot one on the roof of the Line Hotel. We're shooting at Circuit of the Americas. We're shooting at the Central Library. Shooting out in Driftwood. We're going down and like walking along the Gulf Coast, shooting one.
Wow.
So to basically find a bunch of kind of unconventional places to have a concert, places that you couldn't have a real concert. Because my thing with the live stream video concert thing is, if it's not going to be a normal concert, then I want to do something that I absolutely couldn't do in that context, something that is just unique to this form. And so we're doing these really, like, kind of paradoxically really intimate but also really cinematic shows, and we'll be streaming those over the starting on February 25th, going through about the middle of March. One show with each of 9 venues that are partnering with us, and then we'll have local talent from actually some really cool talent. We haven't announced all of that yet, but some really cool talent joining on each of the shows, and then the proceeds of that will go to the venues, but then also to the Dawa Fund, which is an Austin-based relief organization that provides direct aid to people of color who work in the arts and in healthcare and in the service industry.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. I had the pleasure of watching your Austin FC one. I got a sneak peek, y'all. Be jealous because it was amazing. Just seeing the cinematography side. And I've seen a lot of, I was watching live streams and shows and all that before quarantine even happened. I never watched Netflix. I never watched anything besides YouTube sets. And then I obviously got a little too much of that during quarantine. However, what was so unique and what I think people should be very excited about is, like you said, the whole act of, I've seen, so there's DJ sets, you know, the DJs are sitting there and they're in this space, but you're going to very unique places like the FC stadium that is not open to anyone. Not anyone can see. So you're getting this like sneak peek, but you're also moving through so it's not like he's just stationary, y'all. And it's like, he's literally taking you on a tour also while he's singing. And I was just like, is he out of breath? Is he getting tired? Like, did he train for this? Like,
it was a workout.
I was about to say, okay, that's what I was wondering. Cause I was like, he is going. And I mean, tell us about that. Cause all the different elements to that. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. So, and y'all, it really is an experience. I couldn't take my eyes off of it when I was watching it because of the cinematography. And a lot of these people But and the ones that I've seen, and I don't consider myself a live stream expert, but I've seen a lot of them to know that when they're just stationary or when it's just one shot, your eyes just get bored, especially with as much as we're glued to our phones right now. We need to be visually stimulated. You did it in a beautiful way of being able to see these different shots, these different drone shots, and just the beauty of Austin and really capturing the essence of that particular venue. But tell us about that process of filming the whole
Yeah,
thing.
it's been wild. Like it was one of those kind of crazy ideas that we basically just announced it so that I would have to do it. It was like
I
this
like
sounds really
that.
hard. This sounds like a lot of work.
Just
And
proclaim
if I
it and dream, believe, achieve.
yeah, it's like if I think about this too long, I'll talk myself out of it. So we announced it, and then um, alongside my management team, we've been just scrambling to get a bunch of a bunch of the venues on board. And then in terms of making the show, it's just four of us. It's
Wow.
me and three people uh, running cameras, and yeah, I'm extremely proud of how they came out. It's like I'm not the type of person to toot my own horn
I
too
was gonna
much,
say
but
toot. You should toot away because it's
it's
really good.
really really good.
It
They're
is.
really good.
It is. I would not be sitting here if it and saying it wasn't. If it wasn't, I'd just be like, mm-hmm. Yeah. But no, it's really good, y'all. And I'm excited now. I think it's such a great just opener to everything else that you're doing. So I'm excited to even see the other. Now that I've seen that, it does make you want to be like, okay, I want to see the next one. I want to see the next one. So it's kind of just, I don't know if that was your goal, but
Definitely the goal.
mission accomplished. You got me. But yeah, that was just, it's just so thematically done and kind of bringing that to life. So kudos to you. Everything that you do is just so well thought out, and it's just, you see it. And I hope other people can see that, because you aren't the typical artist that's just sitting there, throwing things out on SoundCloud, and, there's an artistic expression behind it, which is really,
Thank
really
you.
cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So with all that being said, what are you looking forward to the most this year? I know you got your virtual tour, but have you thought past that and all? I know you got all these releases coming out. Is this kind of just like the big push right now, or are you already thinking ahead to the next thing?
I don't know. There's so much going on. I'm definitely focused on this right now, but I'm already almost done with my next record. I'm producing some records for other people that I'm
Wow.
excited about. Um, got some like really cool stuff happening in my personal life that I can't talk about yet, but that I will soon. Um, yeah, there's just a lot going on. I hope for humanity's sake that 2021 is a big bounce back year.
Yeah. You and me both. So I want to touch on that really quick with producing, and with you now producing for other people and working with other artists.
Mm.
How has that affected like your own sound? Like, are they influencing you as well, or is it more of like this collaborative effort, or how has that process been?
Yeah, so I really try to let my negative experiences with producers inform the way that I approach other artists to produce. I really want them to know that it's their show, that like their name is going to be the name on the front of the record, not mine. So like what you want is what we'll do. I'm just like my expertise is taking like a bare bones song and turning it into a record, and so I'm there to do that. Um, in terms of how it influences my work, you definitely, at least I definitely learn something every time I collaborate with somebody, because there are just so many different ways to write a song. There's so many different ways to craft a record, and everybody brings their own quirks to it. And then people bring other stuff out of you, like I'm working with an artist right now, who's really talented, and just because of the nature of the record that we're working on, there are things that I might not have tried on my own record that it's like, well, this could work here, and then I try it, and now I understand how that thing works, and maybe I bring a piece of that back to my own music. So, um, yeah, it's just music is making music is like a lot of other things in that the more you do it, the better you understand it, the easier it is. And so, having a project where like I don't have to live and die on every single decision, and it doesn't have to be, I don't have to write all the songs myself, but I can just kind of make something that's exciting for that other person. That's that's a really cool role for me, and so yeah, it gives me, it's really energizing. It's really energizing when I go back to my own work after producing for somebody else.
I can only imagine. But that's got to be a nice, almost like a mental break for you, even though, like, we obviously know you work on vacation now. So even when this is something that seems like that'd be something fun for you, because that is just you producing. That is just you you're able to be a spectator in something that someone else is leading the charge on, which kind of gets that creative part of your brain a break, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially writing and producing alone, like one of the best things about having collaborators, and this is a thing that I don't have when I work on my own stuff. When you have a collaborator, a good collaborator, you have an editor, so you have somebody who'll tell you, oh, I don't know how I feel about that, or oh, that's great, let's keep doing that. But when you're working alone, you have to do that for yourself, which takes a lot of energy. And so kind of getting to be in that position of like watching somebody else try something and be like, oh no, you're doing great, this is wonderful, it's amazing, keep going. Or being like, I don't know if that's quite doing the thing that you are going for, but if we tweak it like this, then I think it'll be great. Kind of getting to be that cheerleader and like guide for the process, as opposed to like sitting alone in a room and be like, is this good?
Right. Well, that's what I was wondering, because it's like you really have to trust yourself,
Yeah.
in anything. Like, it's always nice to everything. Like when you're growing up too, and you're always like kind of asking your parents or like, hey, is this work? Until you finally get to be like, okay, I got this. But then, like you said, with something like that, I can only imagine like working with someone and then seeing what you create. But then you're like, okay, now I have to get back in my mode. But now I'm like, wait, should I go back? And no one's there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So last question, but I'm just curious, who are some of your biggest influences, your musical influences?
Oh man, this is always a hard question, because I never want to leave anybody out, but B, I just listen to so much different music. I don't know. I think I think I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of stumped, but that's like one of the questions I get most frequently, and I
Yeah, I
never
was just
have a good
curious
answer for it.
because your voice and your sound is so diverse. So that's where I'm like, I'm just curious, like what your musical influences are because of learning to play the violin, the trumpet, guitar, drums, and it's like if there was one sole person. So that's okay. It's okay not to have one particular influence, because that just means you're
Yeah.
influenced by everything. So that's really
Well,
really cool.
I take a very broad view of the nature of influence. I think that the ways that we think and talk about authorship in our particular society are kind of weird and arbitrary and tainted by capitalism. Like, I have to take credit for this so that I can get paid for it so that I can eat. But like, honestly, like, I couldn't write songs if my parents hadn't been the way they were, and I couldn't write songs if the people who invented the the drugs that cured my pneumonia when I was a kid hadn't saved my life, and I couldn't
Wow.
make music if like the person who invented the computer I'm working on or wrote the software that I'm using. Like, so everything that any person does is just a result of so many people pouring themselves into these things. Like, even something as simple as food, when I think about like how many people must have died like trying stuff, like so that we could all, you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
I've never thought of that. I've never bitten into a hamburger and been like, oh, I wonder. But you're exactly right. Like, there's probably someone who probably died from a hamburger just
right, seriously,
before
just
a hamburger was
so,
cooked or before it was all
right,
that stuff. You're
so
right.
that all people who followed after that would know this works. Like, when even something as simple as bread, like when you think about what bread is, somebody was in a field and there was grass, and they took the grass and then they took the seeds out of the grass, and then they ground up the seeds, and then they mixed it with water and eggs and then bacteria and made, like, what on earth? So many generations of human expertise must have gone into that. And then when you think about something as complex as a song, like, I didn't invent the language I'm speaking. I didn't invent any of the instruments I'm playing. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like, I wish that I didn't have to just be, oh no, I wrote this song because I'm so brilliant. Like, it's a result of just millions and millions of people collectively coming together to create these things.
Wow. It's incredible. I feel like artificial intelligence is just going to happen. Like, everything, the next generation, the next level of that is just, you're going to think something and we're going to have it just magically appear. That's coming. Just wait. Mark my words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, how can people find you on all
You
the
can find
different
me
things?
at mobleyhu.com, mobleyWho.com. And there are links to everything there.
Instagram, SoundCloud, Spotify, all those good things.
All that.
And y'all, get tickets for this virtual tour. You do not want to miss this. I'm going to you have all these different packages on there too. So I noticed that there's more than just your merch is really dope, by the way, as well.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
There's a lot of packages on there, tickets, all kinds of stuff, mobleyhu.com. Thank you so much for being here. So nice to finally meet you, even though we're virtual.
Yeah.
I'm excited to check out more of your shows and just continue to support you, and anything that I can do for you, let me know.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, y'all.